Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Work at Home Rockstar Podcast. Excited for today's guest. She is the founder and creator of Old Chicks Know Shit, and she provides inspiration and information to help middle-aged women create the next kick-ass chapter. Super excited to be rocking out today with Jennifer Arthurton. Jennifer, you ready to rock?
I am ready to rock. Thanks for having me.
Perfect. Thanks for being here. So we always start off on a good note. So tell me a story of success in your business or your life that we can be inspired by.
Yeah. So, my business is a success story of my life, actually. So, in the year leading up to my 50th birthday, I found myself divorced, unemployed, an empty nester, and bedridden with a stress-related illness after a 30-year career in corporate marketing. And I had to ask myself some pretty hard questions about like what I wanted for my life and what's next, right? I could continue on the path that I was, or I could use this as an opportunity to do something that I felt passionate about. And that was one of my things was I wanted to wake up every day and feel passionate about what I did. And so, it was the beginning of the creation of Old Chicks Know Shit, which is a podcast, a community, and mastermind programs for women who are looking to reinvent themselves in their second chapter.
Awesome. Well, that sounds good. Now, on that path, though, there are sometimes some bad notes that get hit.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm wondering, I like to normalize that just to make sure that everybody understands that, it happens to all of us. So I'm wondering, what's something that was just really didn't work out well for you that we can learn from or avoid?
Yeah, I think like for me, having spent so long in a corporate environment, basically from my very first job, like I did what everybody did, went to school, you went to a good college, got good grades, got into the corporate world, worked my way up the ladder. And I finally kind of got to a place that I had always aspired to. And I was like, there's something else, like there has to be more to this. Like, this is what I've been working so hard for. But I would never let myself even entertain that idea because I thought I only knew what I knew. Right. And that like, this was the only path available to me. And so, being able to, and then when I found myself in that position where I literally had to, begin recreating my life, I literally was like, okay, this is the end for me, right? I'm too old, people don't start over at 50. And I bought into every limiting belief I could possibly come up with, like those that were served up to me externally from, media and things like that. And then everything in my head, like all of the limiting beliefs about myself. And I hung on to those for a very long time, and it kept me stuck from moving forward until, one day I got tired of my own crap. And I was like, okay, you have two choices here. Go do what you were doing or do something else, but you can't stand in the middle of the road anymore. But I stood there probably for much longer than I would care to admit because I was afraid to kind of look at like, what are the possibilities, right? I just, every time an idea would come to me, there would be oh, but you're not smart enough. Oh, you don't have any experience in that. Oh, somebody's doing it better, right? So it was like, I just let all of that literally paralyze me at the beginning.
Wow. I think your story is going to be relating to a lot of people. I know for myself, I went to university, got a degree, went and worked for a big old company. It was only for 10 years. And I found myself without a job at 30 when the company went bankrupt. So I remember having a lot of the same thoughts that you had. And I had a totally different situation. So I think that it's like no matter where we are, we always come up with these excuses on why we can't do something. But there really is no excuse, right?
Right. What I think too, the thought for me of being like self-sufficient, like I really wanted to be self-sufficient, like freedom is one of my top values, right? And which is probably true for most of the people listening to this.
Me too.
Right, yeah. Exactly. But the idea of that freedom was actually scary. Like I really wanted it, but the idea of being self-sufficient, like I have only to rely on me, was the part that I think was really, really scary because, again, like I said, every insecurity, every limiting belief that I had about myself was basically validating that, oh, you can't do this. There's no way. You need a paycheck. How are you going to survive? Like, I remember thinking, how are you going to pay your mortgage? Like, how is all of this going to happen? You can't do this on your own, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It would have been so much harder for you too, because I know that in my case, I was, 20 years younger than you were when I found myself there. But like, I remember my mindset being a little bit different. I remember thinking like, well, this company, because they were on the rocks the entire time I was there. When I graduated, it
Right.
was basically a few months in, maybe 4 months in, when the company started to fall apart and start laying
Right.
off, right? So, the writing was on the wall. I knew it was going to happen. But I remember thinking, like, we have this script in our head that, you stay with the company, be loyal, and, they'll take
Yeah.
care of you right to the end. And then I remember not being taken care of and totally being thrown on the road. And I thought, well, if I go and start my own business and I start to get my own clients, well, then maybe I have 10, 20, 30, 40 clients. If somebody leaves me, then I still have all those other clients. So, I
Yeah.
will at least have some income. Whereas if I go get another job and work for another company and put all this time and effort into it, and then they lay me off again, then I'm going to be back here again. Right.
Well, see, and that was what, I had a very similar train of thought after a while, because, after had giving, like, the company that I was with for almost 12 years, right? And basically gave my all, like, hence I was burnt out, like I was physically burnt out. And what had happened was I ended up taking a leave of absence from my job because I was experiencing the physical symptoms. And I was like, okay, you got to get this under control. And it was in the process of that leave of absence, like I took a 2-month leave of absence, that they told me that I no longer had a job. And I was like, wow, like I have given you everything to the point that I have physically burnt myself out. And at my low point, you guys kick me to the curb. And I'm like, wow, never making myself like that vulnerable to something again. And then I had experienced layoffs before in my career. And it really, and having been pretty high up in the organization, people are literally a line item on a spreadsheet. And when they need to, they can just boop, hit delete, and it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And, and so that was, again, one of the motivations for me was to say, and I valued freedom. I'm like, okay, I really need to find a way to get over this, this hump of limiting beliefs that I'm sitting on right now.
Right. Okay. So then what's next? So now you have to take something that you're probably good at, or you have to figure out a new path. So what did you decide to do then? How did you transition to the next step?
Yeah. So, as I was figuring out how to recreate my life, I had asked myself, like, what do you really want for your life? Like, what is it that you love to do? Right. And so I kind of went back through my career and, like, plucked out the pieces of things that I love to do. And I'm a creator at heart. Like my best times in my career was when I was building something that didn't exist before. Right. So I was like, okay, we need to create something. And then the second part of what I loved most about my career was teams. Like I loved running teams. I love the power of a team. I love nurturing a team and, like optimizing, like I loved all of that type of stuff because I love people. Like I love seeing people achieve their best. And so as I started to think about this thing, at the same time, I was searching for, the inspiration of like, where are all the amazing, 50, 60, 70-year-old women who are recreating themselves? What are they doing and how are they doing it? And, as I was looking around, like I wasn't like everything that I saw was actually pretty depressing, because if you look at women over 50 in mainstream media, you're basically seeing bladder leakage protection, meal replacement shakes, and retirement. And I was like, okay, well, maybe these are necessary, but like, that's like a teeny tiny fraction of the story of what it means to be a woman in her 50s. Right. And so I was like, okay, so I started talking to people about their stories. And, I found tons of inspiring women, and I was like, okay, I need to share that. Like, it's the inspiration that I need. And I know that others need it too. And then, I'm also a really good coach, a really good mentor. And I wanted to create the space, the community, and the environment where women felt comfortable to bring, their fears. So very similar to what you do, to bring their fears and hurdles about recreating yourself in midlife to the table so that we could work through it all together. Because the one thing that happened to me is I felt very, very alone. Like I was looking around at everybody else's life going like, isn't this perfect? And I'm 50. Aren't I supposed to be riding off into the retirement sunset on the arm of a handsome man? And I'm like, yeah, that's not my reality. So there has to be something else. Wow. And so that was kind of the culmination. And I say this to all of the people in my community is like, everything in your life that has led you to this point is exactly what you need to get to the next one. You might have to rearrange the pieces a little bit and plug them in a little bit differently, rewire them. But all of that experience is valuable. Like, it's not for nothing. You're not really starting over.
Yep. Yeah. And I love what you just said about going back into your career and plucking out the things that, because I mean, we no matter where you are in your path, there are some things that you're good at, and you can pluck those out and make a business out of it, right?
Yeah. And for me, it was like, where did I feel most passionate in my career? Like, what did I absolutely love? Because I knew that was the thing, right? And part of the thing was in my corporate job, I had actually, as I had kind of risen in the ranks, I had kind of been losing my passion for what I did, right? Like, I was getting kind of out of the weeds a little bit and starting to, get into the executive level. And I was losing my passion for it. So it was about, okay, where did I feel most passionate in my career? And then let me write that down. And so I'm a huge proponent of like creating a journal or something where you can actually put this stuff down on paper, because in your head, it's very different than when you actually see it written.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes it real too. So now,
makes it very real.
Now, passion is one thing. However, you also have to be good at something too. And so I'm wondering, how do you approach practicing? How do you approach getting good at what you do and honing your craft?
Well, and this for me is where the passion comes in, because when you're learning anything, there is going to be the periods of suck, right? And sometimes the periods of suck are a really long time. And if you don't have something pulling you forward through that time, it's so easy to quit. Like the number of times, like I remember, even starting my podcast, or the first, Facebook Live that I ever did. Like I look back at it now and I kind of cringe a little bit. But like, I was scared to death to do those things. I'm like, people are going to judge me. Nobody wants to hear what I have to say, like all of this. But I kept showing up, right? I kept showing up every day. I kept showing up. And the reason I kept showing up is because I knew I had a mission. Like I wanted to help women. Like I wanted to see women, being inspired about recreating their lives. And that's what kept me showing up. Had it not been for that, I probably would have said, well, I suck at podcasting. I suck at doing lives, because I did. I really did. Right. And I would have just given up.
Yeah. So you really do connect with your passion, connect with your why, and then that keeps you coming back to it, right?
Yeah. You have to have something to keep you pulling you forward.
Right. Now, so what about, the band? What about putting yourself around the right people and assembling a team and all that things and delegating? How do you do that? How do you find the right people? Do you need anybody else in your business? What do you do about that?
Yeah. So I'm a huge proponent of people working in their zone of genius. And it became very clear to me what I was good at and what I was not so good at, like early in my business. And I struggled through for a long time, like doing it all. And then I think probably one of the best things that I did for my business was hiring a virtual assistant before I thought I was actually ready. Like if you looked at the numbers, you'd probably be like, yeah, but delegating some things that were actually bogging me down was bogging my business down as well too, right? Because like I wasn't good at that stuff. Like it was taking me probably twice as long. Like podcast editing was one for me. Like it would take me so long, right, that nothing else could get done. And when I outsourced that, it was like, oh my goodness, now I can stick to what I'm really good at, which is talking to people, like interviewing people, doing, finding amazing guests. And like that, it just accelerated my trajectory. I probably wouldn't be where I am had I not done that. So I actually took that step. And the thing that held me back, like before I was ready, and the thing that held me back was, oh, can I afford it? Can I afford it? Well, now I look back on it and I'm like, that's the best money I ever spent. Right? Because it doesn't actually, and in my head as well, the expense of that was something huge. And I found somebody who works at an hourly basis. She has other clients. And so sometimes like it's only a couple hours that I pay her, and it takes literally, like double that amount of time off my own schedule so I can focus on what I'm good at.
Yeah. Well, and I think what you're saying there is it's a subcontractor. It's not somebody that you hired full time, right?
Oh, no, absolutely. Right. So I'm still the only full-time employee of my business, but I have, other people who support the business. So my VA, my podcast editor. I also have somebody who writes for me as well too. although I love writing, but sometimes I just need somebody else's perspective. But yeah, just being able to surround those people who are just really good at what they do, just like it gives you a perspective too, because it can be a very lonely journey, and it's so easy to get bogged down in your own stuff and lose perspective of what you're doing. So having somebody look at it from the outside is actually like where they can say to me, yeah, I didn't quite get that. And I'm like, okay, perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
Right, because to me it made perfect sense.
Yeah, and I like what you're saying, because I mean, if you are focused just on the money, on trying to pay the least amount, well, then you're probably not going to get what you want, right? Because
Right.
especially in your case, you're like, well, no, I only need a couple hours a week or whatever it is. Then
Yeah.
why don't I get somebody who's really good during those couple hours, and then I make sure that I can focus on something else and not have to babysit them, right?
Well, and the other part of, the cost of not hiring somebody. So there's the actual cost, but the cost of not doing it is the two things that I wanted out of my business, which was freedom and passion. Right. And it was taking me away from the things that I'm passionate about. And it was also taking away from the freedom that I wanted to be able to do the things that I wanted. Right. And so the flip side of that, so the amount, that's why I'm saying it was the best money I've ever spent, because the payoff for that money isn't just the person doing the thing. It's all of the side benefits that I get from that, about being able to, like I said, focus on what, on what makes me happy and where my passion lies.
Yeah, well, and when you think about it, I mean, your energy goes down when you're doing something that you don't like doing.
In a
So
big way.
yeah, in a big way. So I mean, if you're spending time in your business doing things that are bringing you down, then how can you bring your best self to the things that you really need to be doing, right?
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes, even at the very beginning, before I hired a VA, sometimes I would send something out, I would write something, or I'd, thinking about a podcast episode, and I would have to send it to a couple friends and say, okay, feed this back to me. Right. Like, so you get creative about ways that you can, get the support that you need. And sometimes that worked and sometimes it didn't. It's a lot more streamlined now with, having a VA, but yeah, you just have to find ways to be able to stay in what lifts you up, because one is an energy drain and the other one is like an energy,
Boost.
increasing boost. Right. Exactly. And that energy boost allows you to get so much more done.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I think anybody can kind of see that, right? When you're excited, time flies. You get so much stuff done. You bring your excitement to the phone calls that you're having when you're talking to people about your business. If you just got off a string of things you didn't like, it's going to take you some time to get that energy back, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right on. So now what about mentors, coaches, masterminds? Do you participate in any of that stuff yourself?
100,000%. So when I was at the beginning stages of reinventing my life, one thing that was very, very clear to me was like, if I want my life to be different, I have to show up differently in it. And I was like, I need somebody who's going to call me on my crap, who is going to, drag me up by my ear when I want to quit. Like, I need somebody to reflect me back to me. And I hired my first coach. And I remember very clearly the day I hired my first coach, and I spent like a lot of money. And I was like, what am I doing? Like, this is insane. Like, why am I paying this amount of money? Again, it turned out to be the very best thing I could have ever spent money on. Like, I could have invested in a new computer or, fancy business cards or like whatever that stuff is. Instead, I spent it on that coach who literally, again, like reflected me back to me and reminded me more than anything, like reminded me when I of my genius, of my passion, like all of that stuff when I was like in the suck and really wanted to quit. And I mean, that was, that was what, 8 years ago now I hired my first coach. I have had a coach, always a mentor, always from that point forward, because we cannot see ourselves objectively, right? We just can't. And being able to surround yourself with like-minded people, people who are going to challenge you, people who are going to pull you forward, people that you can learn from. So whether it be, a mindset coach, business strategy coach, like whatever that is, you need those people to keep moving you forward. Yeah. Right? Because everybody knows that like the fastest way to self-development is to start a business. Because like no stone is left untouched. Like personal development comes as your business develops.
Yeah. You uncover a lot of your own limiting beliefs when you start a business, right?
Oh yeah.
All of a sudden, you don't have a boss with all this. I don't know. I think one of the thing about when you get hired for a job is that you get this like list of things you need to do, and your boss trusts you because they gave you that job. So you just do it and you feel like, but when you're working for yourself, there's nobody that's giving you that list of
No.
things to do anymore. Right.
Right.
And
Right. Exactly.
and I think that's, in a way, I know that people hire coaches for mainly two reasons. I think either to learn something or for accountability. And I
Mhm.
think the accountability part is downplayed way too much. Like
Oh
you're
yeah.
saying it, right? I mean, it's, if nothing else, hire somebody for $50 a month that doesn't know anything, that you can just explain what you're doing and tell
Yeah.
them what your goal is, and then show up the next session with the goal done, right? Like,
Yeah.
better than nothing, right?
Yeah. And it's the same thing with masterminds. It's why I now run masterminds in my business, is because surrounding yourself with people who are on the same journey, who know what it's like, who've experienced a lot of what you've experienced or are experiencing at that moment, right? Again, feeling like you're not alone and seeing other people's success and seeing other people's and learning from other people's challenges is so incredibly powerful, more than I can probably express to you. But like, I mean, as humans, we're pack animals, right? Like we don't do so well on our own. Like we need a tribe. And so finding that tribe of like-minded people is just incredibly important, I think, to the growth of your business.
Yeah. And the growth of yourself as well, too.
And the growth of yourself. Yes.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I think it's probably a evolutionary survival tactic to be part of the pack, because if you're alone, you're probably,
Exactly.
so we have this inherent desire. But also, like you say, I mean, now especially in, from a home business, you're literally like alone, and that is tough, right?
Yeah.
So having some sort of like, so now you like, what do you do for your mastermind? How'd you find your mastermind, first of all?
The one that I'm in, or the one that I run?
Both. So okay, let's talk
Yeah.
about from a perspective of how do I find a mastermind?
So one of the things that I started doing at the very beginning of my reinvention journey, when I was trying to figure out which end was up, is I made a point to have coffee with as many different people as I could possibly find from every walk of life, because I wanted to know like what inspired them, how did they get to where they were, what are their stories, like what do they love, what do they not love, right? And it was all kind of like nuggets of information that I would take away from each conversation. So when I started my own business, and I was really like, I'm a people person, right? And I'm used to being able to walk down the kitchen and get a cup of coffee and chat with my coworkers, right? So instead I would set up these weekly dates with other people that I would meet either through friends of friends, or I met at a conference or things like that, or just people from my past life. And those people would, through conversations, I would find out about, this mastermind, that coach, this, right? And so we just I had this ongoing conversation going with all of these different people. And that's how I found my tribe. Like those people then became my tribe. And, then I found formal masterminds through that. Right.
Wow.
Yeah. And, even with, and that's why I do the masterminds as well, too, because like we all get stuck somewhere. Like I haven't met anybody yet who runs a business that didn't like have some challenge, some bump that, maybe it's sidelined them. Maybe I even did this. Like I went back to corporate because I was like, no way, can't do this, can't do this, can't do this. Went back to corporate, was there for like 4 months, I think. And then I was like, oh crap, what did I do? This is not it. And then that kind of lit my fire to say, okay, I need to find a way to get over these hurdles. And that's exactly why I created the mastermind, because it can be lonely. It can be very easy to quit. You're in your own head. And like, I want to create that community. Like one of the things that I used to do in my corporate world when I ran teams was I used to have a weekly meeting where, the heads of each of the departments that I ran, I was like, you come to the table with whatever problem or challenge that you're having this week, and you put it on the table. And even if your peers don't even know what it is that you do, sometimes they can see that problem from a way different perspective than you can. And they might not know the nuts and bolts of your work, but they're like, hey, what if you looked at it? And people would leave going, oh, okay. Wow, hadn't thought about it that way, because we get stuck in our own circular thinking. Yeah, right. Yeah. Sometimes we know too much for our own good, and just putting it out there, somebody else can see something that you've completely missed. And that like was the impetus for my mastermind. Like I used to do this with my corporate teams, and I'm like, now I do this with my masterminds, because that's how what helps people see and to keep going.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you're thinking in your own little box, right? So as soon as you tell somebody else, especially if they know nothing about what you're doing, all of a sudden you think about things differently. They're not using the same rules as you are.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Perceived rules that you are. Yeah.
Perceived rules. Yes. It's funny that you said about the coffee date thing. That's a strategy. We have a lot of things in common. That's a strategy that I used as well. And that's actually how my current business got started. Was I would go on Facebook and find people with similar interests as I am in my local area and ask them if they want to go for coffee. And I'm a networker and I'm a people person as well. So my strategy with that would be, what can I do to help them with their business? I want to find out about their business. I want to find out if there's anybody that I know that I can connect to them. And then it turns out, things start to move when that happens. And one of the guys I went for coffee with was looking for a website. I wasn't doing websites at the time. And so I offered to do his website for him, and that turned into a business. He started giving me referrals. So it's amazing what can happen just by going for coffee with people, right?
Well, and that's the thing, because I was coming out of corporate and my whole network was people who are in corporate. And I was like, okay, I think like them. I look like them. We do kind of the same types of thing. I'm like, okay, I need people who are living a different life from me, because I need to see that. Like, I need that perspective. And I was, amazed at the things that people were doing, right? Like I always used to say to myself when I was in corporate, who are these people in the mall at 11 a.m.? Like, who are these people having drinks on the patio at 3 p.m.? Like, who are they? Like, how do they do that? Right. And then I was like, oh, look at that. It's possible. Right.
Yep. Now, just as a disclaimer, they still work, right?
Oh, yes. Sorry.
However, it's just a matter of having that flexibility, right? I mean,
right.
We have the same thought about freedom. It's the freedom to choose when your hours of work are going to be, right?
Oh, yeah. I work probably as hard, if not harder, than I did in my corporate career now. But the difference is, like, one was an energy, like we were talking about, one was an energy depletion and the other one is an energy creation. And so I have the energy to keep going long past, Yeah.
Which is why it's okay that we work as much as we work, because people are like, oh, it seems like you're working all the time. I'm loving what I'm doing. Like,
exactly.
I want to do it.
Right. And, so many of us, and I found this so true when I was having this, conversations with people, is like, so many of us have these dreams and desires that we want for our lives. And, and I did this for the longest time. Like, I didn't have necessarily a concrete dream, but like these ideas would pop up and I would push them away. Right. And I would never allow myself to entertain them. Right. Because it would be like, oh, okay, I got work to do, get back. And one of the things I encourage everybody now is to actually spend time dreaming about, like, what's your perfect day? What would you like to be doing? Because when you allow your brain to go into those places, like it's changed, right? Like you're planting a seed and you're allowing it to grow a little bit. And entertaining dreams and desires and finding our passions is like probably one of the best things that we can do for ourselves as humans. I mean, there's scientific research behind, people following their passion and, being driven and, being happy with what they do every day, right? Like having purpose. Like it's the key to longevity.
It is real. And you know what? What do you have to lose?
Exactly. Well, okay. And that question, like, what do you have to lose? Like when I say that to people, it's like, my house, I have kids in college, like all of that type of stuff. And that's real too. Like that is real. Right. Yeah. Like, but it doesn't, like, we tend to be as humans very all or nothing. I'm either doing this or doing that.
Yeah.
But there are ways to incorporate your passion into where you are with a goal of getting to that other place.
Well, and what I meant by what do you have to lose? It's by the dreaming, by actually
by the dreaming. Yes.
Because when you do that, as you mentioned, and you're like you say, lots of coincidences in life where you sit down, you dream, and then all of a sudden an opportunity, a path shows up in front of you, right?
Yes.
Like, it's just a matter of
magic.
It's magic, exactly. So what do you got to lose by spending 10 minutes a day dreaming, right?
I am a massive proponent of visualization. Like, I have seen things change in my life through the power of visualization. And I spend every day at some point for some amount of time. Sometimes it's 10 minutes, sometimes it's 3 minutes, in the vision of what it is that I'm trying to create. Because like you just said, when you get into that vision and you're in the energy of that vision, doors will open, opportunities will present themselves. Like I said, it's like magic.
It is. And I mean,
Yeah.
I can't say enough about it. It's just so many times, like you same thing with you visualize something and then all of a sudden it just happens. Like that can't be coincidence if it keeps happening over and over again, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Or yeah, you look around and you're like, oh, wait a minute. Oh my God, that was my vision. Like, here it is, like right in front of me. And I've seen this so many times in my life. It's insane.
Well, and you know what? The opposite is true as well. When you visualize bad things happening, they tend to happen, don't they?
Yeah. Well, what is it? They say worrying is like praying for what you don't want.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Now, I mean, that being said, it's good to be prudent on both sides, plan
Absolutely.
for possibilities, good and bad. But I think that's the thing, is that a lot of us spend way more time planning for the bad things than we do planning for the good things, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So it's time for your guest solo. So tell me what's exciting in your business right now.
So much. Well, first of all, my podcast, the Old Chicks Know Shit podcast, where I get to showcase amazing women doing amazing things. Like, I come off those podcast interviews like floating on clouds. Like, the conversations are so good. And then the other thing that I'm super excited about is the Midlife Kickstarter Mastermind. So this is an intimate group of women who come together on a weekly basis, and we bring our challenges, our successes, our fears, our limiting beliefs to the table to be witnessed and supported by other women on the same journey. So like-minded women on the same journey as you, and watching the evolution of people and their dreams throughout the process of this mastermind. Again, like, nothing lights me up like that. Like, it inspires me, like, and I do teachings and things like that within the mastermind, but what they don't realize is, like, I'm running this mastermind, but I'm also so inspired by it. It is the thing that keeps me moving forward as well too, because I'm watching these women like do incredible things, start charities, start businesses, even tackle like physical feats, that they've never done before. And I'm like, wow, like, look at these amazing kick-ass women, right? And it's literally fueling me from the inside as well too. So yeah, I'm super passionate about, women, going in the face of the cultural narrative about what it means to be an older woman, and to really like show the world what's possible.
Right on. I'm not surprised that you're on clouds, because it looks like you have wings on with your chair there. Like, look at those angel wings. So how do we find out more about your mastermind, about your business? How do we find out more about all that?
So you can find me on all the socials. So Facebook and Instagram at Old Chicks Know Shit. My website is oldchicksknowshit.com. So that's Old Chicks, KNOW. So no shit.com. And then I also have a free Facebook group of the same name as well. So
awesome. Thank you so much for rocking out with me today, Jennifer. This has been a lot of fun.
It's been amazing. Thanks for having me.
Stuff. And to the listeners, make sure you subscribe, rate, and comment. We'll see you next time on the Work at Home Rockstar podcast.